Good. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Natalie coming to you live. Spurred and coffee. Got my coffee here. Mm-mm-mm. Mm-hmm. Lovely. So let's get started. Um, Again, we were reading, or I'm reading the Abundance book. And hopefully, and maybe somebody will bite and want to lead a meditation series, hopefully. If not, no worries. But I will read the meditations on here, and you all are welcome to just go along with it. Um, so the abundance book again is talking about the abundance that we hold within, and remembering that abundance is an internal thing. Good morning, RMH. And so it is an internal thing, not an external thing. So people are constantly looking for abundance, right? They're like, well, I want to tap into the flow of abundance. And what does that even mean? And, you have people who teach workshops and there's so much, right? Because people tend to live in lack and limitation, not even aware of the magnitude of the abundance that exists within them, that they can actually create within their own world, right? And around them. And it's quite amazing that once you get your abundance consciousness going, the magnitude of what could be created, and it's pretty cool. So it's tapping into your internal abundance and understanding how to utilize that energy, so that you can magnify scenarios to yourself to be able to work on your divine birthright. So I have a little space for my mug today. Okay, so I'm going to start reading from it. Super cute little book. I have a book that I kind of, at least the structure of the book that I wrote that's similar to this, but so let's see here. All right, here we go. So from the Gospel of Philip, we are reminded of the esoteric practice of transforming vision into manifestation form. What you see, you shall become. The Gnostic worship the pure spiritual light of the indwelling Christ, and through their knowledge of thought form, energy, and principles of manifestation, they were able to cooperate with spirit in the releasing of the creative powers, at least for nearly 300 years following Jesus's time on earth. Here's the cool thing. I love that it says that the spirit and the creativity. And we were talking about this last night in my class about, inspiration, right? That spirit exists in some point of creativity. So when we look at spirit and we understand creativity, creativity is it's not rational, right? It's not coming from this left scientific brain. We're tapping into sort of the creative part of ourselves. And that's where inspiration comes in. That's where we start to look at the environment around us and ask ourselves how we can shape and mold it using the resources that are available here. And that's abundance, right? It's having thanks and praise and gratitude for the things that are in front of us. So, for instance, and I can give you an explanation of when I was a child, maybe you can start thinking of it this way. If we couldn't go camping, right, or we weren't camping, we created an environment that felt like camping, and that was abundance to us. And so for us, we used what we had to recreate the environment. So it was creativity that was utilized. And what did we do? We got these sheets and we put them over the heater, right, or the air conditioner or whatever. They were floor heaters, and then it would like bubble up. Or we would try to make a fort, right? Hey, Katia. And we would make a fort, and we would, put the sheets over so that we can crawl in like if we were camping. That was creativity. That was imagination. That was the spirit. We were inspired, right, to sort of recreate the experience of camping if we weren't in an environment camping. And we did this as kids. So the creativity and spirit come together to create this new thing or mold something new. But it's also the gratitude for the things that we have available to us as well. So drawing from or pulling from the things that are in our environment already. That's abundance, and recognizing it and reshaping it and remolding it into something that we can use, like tools, right? So if we looked at the environment, let's say like, so volcano, if you guys know obsidian, right, comes from volcanic ash that is under pressure. And back in the day, they utilized it for tools. It is the sharpest tool known to man. So it could cut through bone. So they called it flint knapping. And when they did that, with the obsidian, they made tools and they carved tools in order to cut the skin of, if they caught game, right? And they had game and they wanted to cut it, that's what they used. So they were abundant in obsidian, and they used the obsidian, right, to support them through the process. So again, we're looking at our environment. Good morning, Robert. We're looking at the environment around us, the abundance that we have around us, and we say, okay, and we start to say, what resources are available to us? How do we recreate what we want to create in our environment? What is it that we can do using the abundance of what we have, right? Of what's available to us. And that's abundance, and it's tapping into that. It's transforming the space around us and looking at, oh, I'm abundant in, I don't know, maybe I have an abundance of space. Now, how do I utilize that space to create what I want to create? So recognizing. So people tend to think abundance, again, is about having material things, and that's not the case. The abundance is recognizing that we have tools and resources around us to be inspired to create something that will help us or support us in getting a little bit closer to our divine self, right? Or to support us into recognizing who we are, getting closer to who we are internally. So again, using those things. Okay. Good morning, Antoinette. In AD 1800, Irenaeus, Bishop of Lyons, I'm probably saying this right, attacked independent thinking and all teachings related to oneness of God and man, believing that spiritual consciousness and a personal union with God would undermine the authority of the priest. He directed his wrath upon the Gnosticism. First, he issued the 5 books against heresies, followed by the list of accepted writings, choosing only those words which supported his demand for a fixed dogma. The shift in mind direction from within and without had begun, and the innate power of the individual gradually given to an outer structure and a lower authority. When the Emperor Theodosius made Christianity the sole unofficial religion of the state in 395, the institution assumed complete control over the individual mind, and humanity entered a 1,000-year period referred to as the Dark Ages. In fact, the first 400 of this period is considered the Barren Age in Europe, as few advances in literature, science, and education were contributed for the future of the race. What is known today is the prosperity consciousness, the realization of God as a source of all good, was almost non-existent. The feudal system controlled secular life, and the keys to spiritual enlightenment were held by the church leaders. To free subjective interpretation of the doctrine or lack of faith in the state religion resulted in extreme penalties, and with the constant struggle between the church and the individual, the mastery techniques dealing with freedom from the need and the science of forces and the form were temporarily lost. The Western mind was kept in the dark until institutional structures began to crack into the 1500s and the eternal principles of oneness and unity began to surface. So they basically took the wisdom and the information and hid it. And this happens over and over and over again. And typically for the use of power and control, or I would even say it's a false sense of power and control, because you can't really, when it comes to what we call God's word or universal principle or abundance consciousness or the Christ consciousness, however you call it, right? It has many different names. it always will circle back around, because you can't undermine what is true. And the truth of the fact that we are all interconnected to something, right? We all experience, we didn't create ourselves. We didn't derive from ourselves. We don't even really know how we came about, right? When you look back in history, we really don't know, right? We don't understand how we came to this planet. There's theories all over the place, but we still don't truly understand the magnitude that got us here, and what it took, and how did we end up. Why are we the only species? We're looking for other, species and life forms to relate to, but yet there's this unfolding and unveiling of this planet where life exists. And by life, I'm not going to say that the stellar bodies and that the planets aren't life, because they are. They're even space itself is life. But the way that we are constructed, and the way that we are as humans or animals, right? This planet is abundant in resources and different people, different species. We're all separate. We're all different, right? I had a cat in here just this morning with me, Ginger. There's ants, there's mice, there's alligators, there's sharks, there's so many different species among the planet, right? Good morning, Kingdom. So when we start to look at this, they've taken away sort of this idea that we are connected to each other, and they put the structure on the external. Now, dispensationalism is something that I talked about at one point. Dispensationalism is the administration of the divine principles and practices through the Word of God. Basically, how does it become administered into this world? Well, we've taken a structure that was internal and we've externalized it and said, oh no, you have to follow this process. Okay. But the reality is that we are all interconnected. And now we're coming back to this idea of wholeness and oneness and interconnection. Worldviews are shifting. Okay. Worldviews are shifting constantly, and the worldview right now is to a worldview of what? Of holism, of integral principles, where we look at everything as interconnected rather than separate and independent of one another. So you could see it like a web, okay? Like it's a web where everything is interconnected, and the ripple effects of one's choice can ripple out in ways we don't even know. We can't even understand. I don't understand. Sometimes my choice is I don't understand what the effects are going to be right down the road. I don't know. I just know that what I'm doing, or the way that I follow my choices, is through the divine source, right? I tap into that divine wisdom and ask that to lead me. So hopefully that the ripples and the results leads to a healing rather than to destruction. And it might lead to destruction before there's a healing. And people may not understand. Right? Why is everything falling apart? Shouldn't it be good? You were making good choices. No, that doesn't mean that. I was making good choices for me, but that doesn't mean that I don't have to tear down and destroy what is in front of me in order to recreate what is needed. It's like the land of milk and honey when we saw that they left Egypt, right? They left a structure, thinking that, oh, well, what we go into next is just going to be beautiful. No, they were in the desert for a very long time before they found the land of milk and honey, right? Which is what it was called. That there was this period of discomfort, but that was that growth period. And we go through this over and over and over and over again. So when they're taking the scriptures away, or when they're taking our minds away, they're using it to control us. A false sense of control, a false sense of power. But again, the innate experience of the way this world is constructed cannot hide the truth forever. The truth is the truth, and that's always going to be revealed, and it's always going to come out in some way, some form, some fashion. And now we have the internet, so there you go. And I'm not saying the internet's the truth, but you can search what your truth is, right? What is your journey? And there's so much information out there at this point. That you can start on your journey. Some people stumble across spirit and coffee. That's part of their journey. Part of their journey is maybe they heard something that I said that helped them to ignite something in their brain that led them on the journey that they need to go on spiritually. Hopefully that's the point, right? Good morning, Jose Luis. How are you? Okay, so the Rosicrucians are the fraternity of the Rosary Cross, began to exert influence to counter-react religious intolerance, remaining essentially underground until the publication of the Order Manifesto in 1614, following the traditions of ancient Egyptians and the Christian Gnostics. Members of the secret society were known to transcend the limitations of physical world through spiritual awakening and overcome the lack through knowledge, realization of presence and will of God. Okay. So here we go. We know that the church was hiding this information. Now, here's where it gets a little bit difficult for people. Good morning, Betty. How are you? So for some people, it's hard to listen to this type of information because they're so set and afraid, of their religious practices, right? And that it's going to be taken away. Here's the deal. Never be afraid to know. Once you start understanding the truth, right, and you start reading historical books and you start recognizing, you start to heal yourself. Otherwise, you're kind of living in a fantasy of what others have told you. So this goes back to understanding your ancestral lineages and going back to maybe some of the trauma that was caused. I didn't even realize part of my family, good morning, Martinez, is from Kentucky. And I think that some of my ancestors may have done some very awful things to some of the indigenous cultures out there. So for me, because I didn't know this till recently, there's a healing involved. We may not want to accept it, right? That there was blood and war in religious battles, but there were. And there was a ton of things going on, people being ripped from their land, people being ripped from their tradition and their culture. And to go back and say, oh God, part of my family was part of this, but part of my family was actually traditional, right? And native people. And the other part of me were people who were ripping lands apart. And that was some historical trauma that showed up. So going back and recognizing that's part of the healing. That's a part of the abundance consciousness. Without doing this work, really the experience of abundance, it's going to be this false sense of a feeling of abundance, right? Because to truly tap into abundance, we have to understand who we are, right? And how do we heal? And once we do that, then we can recognize that abundance exists everywhere. We're not trying to fix our trauma through the use of materialism, because that's what people tend to think that abundance is. And they're scratching and reaching for things outside of them, right? Rather than looking at the abundance that lives within them and connecting to the earth that is abundant. This planet is abundant. People say it's not, and it is. Plants will grow. I was looking, and I know that we're causing a lot of harm to the planet. Don't get me wrong. But I watched a video about these trees, and I didn't really understand the root system of trees. But it's really cool. The video goes where the trees themselves have these deep-rooted systems, and they communicate to one another underneath the ground. I never really knew this till recently. And I love trees. So, but they send information from the alder tree, and the alder tree, right, sometimes has overflow of nutrients and sugars, right, because it creates sugars through photosynthesis and all that. And it sends the sugars to other trees that may need it. So it's sort of like they feed off each other underground, and they have communication happening underground. It's pretty cool. The way that trees and a tree system works, the root systems, and they go out and they help other trees. Pretty cool, pretty wise. Okay. So going back again to our historical roots to remember to heal. Okay. And once we heal, we're able to recognize the abundance that we have. And the reason I'm talking about trees and plants is because trees and plants, right, will grow and find a way to grow no matter what. And there's certain plants we can eat. So part of it is going back and healing. And I'm going to go back and heal my ancestry and ask for forgiveness from maybe some of my ancestors who didn't do very good, nice things. I'm not 100% sure, but I kind of feel like that's what happened. Okay. So Freemasonry, more ancient than any of the world's living religions, according to Albert Pike, continued the chain of the sacred mysteries through the understanding of spiritual reality and dedication to wisdom, love, service, and master mason. Attained supernatural powers with the ability to bring all sufficiency of visible supply out of an invisible substance. The race mind was beginning to feel the effect of this new light of understanding. By the 1800s, esoteric philosophy and practical mysticisms were moving across Europe into America like tidal wave. The transcendental moment led to Ralph Walden immersion began in New England. The metaphysical movement was ushered by the Ephesians, H.P. Voloski, Heron, all these other people. Okay, society, I'm not going to go through all the names. Founded Christian Science, the New Thought movement blossomed through the work of the teachings. And then a bunch of other people formed Philosophical Society, which I've heard of before, Self-Realization Fellowship, and out of the wealth of material in Edgar Cayce's files grew Association for Research and Enlightenment, to name but a few contributors of the new age of spiritual unfoldment. So there's a bunch of individuals that are named here, and the reality is, okay, fine. But I will say this, some of the new age stuff, just so you know, and I don't agree with everything that I read, just so you know as well, or there's missing information from everything, right? So part of this is we talk about the Freemasons and stuff like that. And I think that originally it started off to want to do good things, but I don't think it ended up that way, because it ended up in the hands of individuals who I think that they bastardized it and they misused it in ways that are not appropriate for the masses. Good morning, Tony. And we can see that in America right now. So we're seeing the result of misuse of this information. I'm very weary to teach people the deeper parts of esoterics without knowing that they truly are going to utilize it for the better of humanity, right? The good of humanity. So there's a couple of things in the book that I would say you guys can do your own research. Of course, that's I highly recommend that you do your own research. Don't listen to me because I know nothing. I always tell me I don't know anything. Don't think I know things. I don't. That you do your own research. And I will say that I think that they wanted to, right? They wanted to do something good. They wanted to create a new foundation for the people, but it went away. And it's funny because I watch American Gods, which was, I like some of the stuff that they say in there, and they talk about how America went completely a left turn, that it started off with wanting to have, they wanted to have some kind of foundation in spiritual principle, right? But they didn't start that way. They started off with war and taking lands and not honoring the people that were already here and asking who, no, they came and they trampled over people. And they said, this is ours and that's that. Well, right there was the start of why we've ended up in such a chaos here in America. And then we became a corporation, and then money became our God. So people don't recognize that materialism has become their God, has become their worship. Okay. And are you guilty? No. But if you recognize it and you allow yourself to recognize this and you allow yourself to heal from it, then you can transition into the abundance consciousness, right? And you can allow yourself to recognize that it's not money that makes you abundant. It's not materialism that makes you abundant. There's something else there, and it's the source of all good that makes you abundant, the source of remembering who you are and tapping into your God self, the source of divine beauty and divine grace. So I like that American Gods told the story, because people don't know this. They're starting to wake up. They're starting to realize that we're a corporation, that America is in fact a corporation. It's a corporation. It's a company. So when people say, "Oh, well, we're a nation under God," no, we're not, because we were bought and we're a corporation and we're a false entity. And there's something in the Bible too that I'd like to say. It's like God said, "Don't breathe. You can't resurrect something from the dead." Well, a corporation is a corp, which is a corpse, which is dead, right? We've breathed life into corporations, dead entities. That's basically part of it, right? And so I don't know if you guys know all this. And people will say, "Oh, it's conspiracy theory." It's not. You can go back and read. They said it on American Gods, which I loved. I was like, it's the information is there. It's not conspiracy theory. It's fact. These are facts. If you start to go back, you'll recognize that America is a corporation and that we are operating and sell ourselves, right? We have sold ourselves. And so money has become the God. Materialism has become our God, like that. And people don't know, they're asleep. It's been hidden, and it's time to free the minds of individuals to say, it's not about the money. It's not about the materialism. Your abundance comes from the fact that you are able to exist on this plane, right? And that everything is available to you if you just have gratitude and understand that there are resources around you everywhere at all times. But we tend to have amnesia and forget that, and we think we need more, bigger, better. The American dream. What is that? It's a corporation dream. Corporate America has done a lot of damage to the planet. And now we see it sort of seeping into India, which is a place I love and adore. And I can see all of the effects and impacts that it's having on India. Agriculture. So, I mean, we could just go on and on and on and on and on and on. And what we think is abundance consciousness, which is materialism, is ruining the abundance that we have internally. Get back to yourself. Heal yourself. Remember that the abundance comes from in you, not external shit that you buy. I'm talking to myself too, right? Because I'm not perfect. I'm human. I bought, look, this mug, consumerism. How do we give back? How do we support each other through the process of this, right? Which is a big healing. So again, sorry, and I may sound like I'm going off on tangents, and I probably am. And that's just because when I'm reading this, right, I haven't read this in a long time. When I think about Masons and stuff, you know, I feel like the Masonic lodges have done some damage to this sacred wisdom that they carried, and that some people didn't utilize it the way it was supposed to be. Or they did, and the story is supposed to play out the way it's supposed to play out. You can take that mindset as well. But be very careful when you start to utilize the powers of the esoterics, because the ripple effects of that you can cause, you may not even understand, and it may do something to your life that you're not ready for. So you got to be grounded and ready for it. Yeah, and not everybody is ready. Yeah, the truth is what is really out there will be coming soon. Yeah. And once we know the truth, right, it's it sets you free. But some people aren't willing to hear the truth yet. They're just not ready for that. And that's why Spirit and Coffee doesn't, I don't go into all of the theories and all of this stuff, because most people are very just, we're just scratching the surface to open the minds of people spiritually. But there's nothing to be afraid of. God is with you always if you have faith. And at the end of the day, that's what I say. I'm like, all those theories, all this stuff, this fear stuff doesn't matter, because God's with you. God's with me. And God will always be with you. And that's the abundance that you have. Good morning, Dark Horse. That is the ability and the that you have. So I'm going to continue on with the abundance book. I like it. It's and then I'm going to read let's see. Good morning to you as well. I'm going to read the first 3 meditations, affirmations. God is lavish, unfailing abundance, the rich, omnipresent substance of the universe. This all-providing source of infinite prosperity is individualized as me, the reality of me. Number 2, I lift my mind and heart to be aware, to understand, and to know that the divine presence I am is the source and the substance of all good. Number 3, I am conscious of my inner presence as my lavish abundance. I am conscious of my constant activity of this mind of infinite prosperity. Therefore, my consciousness is filled with the light of truth. Okay, those are the first 3 meditations. We'll go on to the next one, and hopefully somebody will want to lead a group eventually. We'll see if that happens. So there you guys have it. I love you guys so much. Have a great day. And of course, I will be seeing you all tomorrow. And we'll continue on the journey of the abundance book. Of course, talking about some other stuff and going on tangents. That's what I do. I love it. Okay, so it's all interconnected though. Remember that. It's hard. Sometimes it's hard for people to follow me, but it's all integral, right? It's all integrated, because everything is integrated. And so we can go off in 500 different directions, but remember this, okay? It all leads back to the source. It all leads back to the source. So we can go off into the weeds, but then we come back and we remember it's all interconnected into one. We're all one, okay? Hopefully you remember that. We're all one. We're all interconnected. Even the bad, the ugly, the things we want to reject, those are us. Okay, so I love you guys. Have a great day. You as well, Jeanette. I love you, and I'll be responding to you tonight. I saw that you sent me some messages. Have a great day. Bye-bye.